Hey stragglers and tourists, my name is the iPad Cat. Now, we know that The Last of Us Part 2 will greatly expand on the Infected from the first game, both in story and gameplay. Now, up to this point, we didn't really know how at all. But with the latest trailer and following gameplay, we've gotten a glimpse of what that meant, with the reveal of the Shambler, as well as some small pieces of new information. So, in today's video, I thought I'd go over some thoughts and theories I have on it. So, without further ado,
let's get on with it.
Now, long-time viewers of my channel and members of my Discord server, which you should totally join by the way, link in the description, will know that I am not the biggest fan of there being new infected classes in The Last of Us Part 2. It's, in fact, alongside the multiplayer not being available at launch, one of the very few things that has me disappointed / less excited for the game. I know I am pretty much alone in holding that opinion, but that's beside the point. A little more than a year ago, around the E3 2018 demo, I made a video on this very topic, and how I disliked it. I recommend that you watch that video before this one, as I go more in depth with the problems I have with the new infected there. Though I'll summarize my thoughts here. The fact that 20 years since the outbreak passed in the first game, and we went all over the United States, visited a wide range of different environments, climates, and encountered a lot of different people, and never once heard or saw a single reference to any other infected than the 4 we know of, bothers me when it comes to Naughty Dog adding new ones. If the game had taken place only a short time after the outbreak and limited to a smaller area, it could relatively easily be explained away with time made them evolve, or the climate in this and this area made them change and take on other forms. But that doesn't work with The Last of Us, for the reasons I stated. I don't buy the theory that they simply evolved in the short time that passed between Part 1 and 2. You mean to tell me that they remained exactly the same all across America for 20 years, without any change whatsoever, and then suddenly dramatically evolved in just 5? No. Though let's leave that there, because I said I would just summarize my thoughts on it here, and this is already getting too in-depth. As I said, I've already made a video about that. So, where do they come from? If not for natural overtime evolution, or just simply that we haven't seen them before? Well, officially we have absolutely no idea. In fact, everything we do know is that Naughty Dog are, quote, expanding the infected gameplay space.
And actually we're expanding the infected gameplay space quite a bit as well. Can we say there's some new classes? There's some new classes.
That the Shambler is one of the new infected classes, and that they will justify their existence in Part 2.
And it all has to, everything has to work well to get integrated into the narrative. We can't just willy-nilly act. Everything we're doing is we're trying to keep the world grounded and believable. It all make logical sense.
Other than that, it's anyone's best guess. And I would say the chance that we get an explanation before launch is pretty much 0. So after having thought about this a bit and discussed it with some friends, I have some theories. Now, before we got the information on the Shambler, the only way I could see other infected fit into the lore without retcons was if there would be some sort of in-between stage between one of the classes, or perhaps an ancient bloater of some kind. Considering how neither Ellie nor David knew what it was before encountering it, it's fully possible that there is an even more rare version of it that's older than a bloater. But now, of course, we know that there will be infected that don't match that description, since I very much doubt that the Shambler is an in-between stage. So, when the Shambler's actual abilities and visual appearance was revealed to us, it made me think. What if it is actually a result of some outside factor making it the way it is, rather than the Cordyceps itself? This would allow new infected to have evolved without the problem of the Cordyceps actually having changed from the first game. Now, what do I mean by an outside factor? Well, let me give you the example that made me come up with this theory. Tom Clancy's The Division is another post-apocalyptic franchise where mankind is almost wiped out by a deadly sickness. Now, of course, it's incredibly different from The Last of Us in many ways. But what I thought was so interesting was a new piece of lore that was added in the second game, being how the government desperately tried to stop the spread of the virus. As people were dying like flies and the world was effectively ending, there was no time to try and research a cure for months and then go through the extensive testing that it would require, because by that time it would already be too late. So, once the scientists tasked with coming up with a way to stop the spread found something that seemed to work, a substance that could be sprayed in the air that would kill off and contaminate areas tainted with the sickness, the authorities wasted no time in deploying it. But of course, since it hadn't gone through any testing outside of their sterile lab environment, they had no idea what would happen once they used it out in the real world. And as it turned out, when they deployed it, and the cold temperatures of winter reacted with it, it quickly turned from a miracle cure to a deadly poison gas, killing people almost instantaneously. Now, what does this have to do with The Last of Us? Well, we know that Fedra and the US government had no problems resorting to drastic measures to halt the spread of the infection in The Last of Us's universe. When Joel and Sarah made it to the local military highway checkpoint, the soldier guarding it was simply ordered to shoot them, indicating that this may have been a common method to try and deal with the spread early on. We also know that they bombed the living hell out of their major cities, ready to destroy valuable infrastructure just for the chance at killing infected, as well as mowing down desperate civilians who tried to reach the quarantine zones once they were established, just because it was easier to kill people outright than to try and keep them alive and not get them infected. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds to me like they were willing to do and try absolutely anything to stop the cordyceps. What if, in the Seattle general area, they deployed an experimental chemical or virus, or anything that they initially thought would kill infected individuals, but as it wasn't tested enough, had unintended effects? So when, let's say, a runner or a stalker came in contact with this substance, it reacted with the cordyceps in their body, which resulted in them, instead of going on to become clickers and bloaters, they started growing these tumor-like pods containing the very same substance that was intended to kill them. And then they turned into shamblers, as well as other unknown infected classes that are part of the same evolutionary branch of infected as the shambler, so to speak. Alternatively, it could also be the result of some other natural virus that only exists in the Seattle area, but still the same concept. Both of those options would explain why we didn't see them in the rest of the United States, since, well, if this cure or detergent or whatever you would call it was a massive failure and had the opposite effect, they stopped after testing it in Seattle. Or, if it's just a regular virus, it may not have spread to the rest of the country. Now, of course, this is just a theory, but I think it's one that I actually could accept, rather than, oh, but they were always there, we just didn't see them. Or that, well, they evolved naturally in the 5 years since part 2. Anyways, those are just my thoughts on the topic. I'll have many more theory and discussion videos in the days and weeks to come. So if you're new here, why not consider subscribing to the channel? What do you think? Do you agree with my points? Disagree? How do you think these new types of infected came to be? Tell me in the comments down below and let's discuss it. And until next time, have a great day.